Today's Dungeon Brawlers podcast is indie games.
Welcome to another edition of the Dungeon Brawlers podcast. I am your host once again, Frank, alongside my co-hosts, the incomparable Ian.
It feels like it's been less than 10 minutes since we've been recording. It's a pleasure to be back.
And the perfect Patrick.
Groovy.
This week, as you heard, our topic this week is indie games. Everything about indie games, whether, you like indie games, hate indie games, how they changed the industry, and what indie games you like. And we might even glance over a little bit into the indie games movie, possibly the documentary about indie game making. But let's just dive right into it. I see you searching some stuff, Patrick, so...
What are you saying? I'm cheating here?
He's cheating. He's clearly
It's
cheating.
an open book test.
Seniors do what they want, Pat. It doesn't matter.
Seniors do what they want. But no, honestly, I think it's kind of funny because we can actually go into what we talked about 2 weeks ago when we were talking about early access to video games, and we could go back to a game that we've talked about already once before as being one of the leaders in this sect of gaming, being Minecraft again.
Yeah.
Minecraft was an indie game that certainly blew up in a way that I don't think anybody really saw blowing up the way it did, as we said.
Nobody expected Mojang to make millionaires.
No.
Yeah.
To make millionaires.
These guys made millions of dollars,
They did.
on a $10 early access game.
And that's the whole thing. I mean, I think the thing that makes indie gaming so interesting and why I think it's a good way to start with Minecraft, we're not going to go into Minecraft again because why beat a dead horse?
Yeah.
But...
You're calling Minecraft a dead horse?
Yes, I am. But it's the fact that Minecraft innovated. It did something a little bit differently at that time than anything else.
In terms of the business model.
In terms of the business model. And that's what made, that's what made Minecraft so interesting to the public, is just, it was different. It was different than what you saw in your typical AAA title. And I feel like that's what makes indie gaming so interesting as a whole, is in order for these companies to break out and to become something and to make a major impact, you have to do something differently than everybody else. And, games, for example, like Fez was different because it had that old retro-looking style, but it brought in that 3D effect in the game where you could play in 3 dimensions, which was definitely something different. There was a game for the PlayStation 3 by the name of Echochrome, which was a puzzle game where it was all about perception. You had one character that would walk around in the game, and basically your goal was, it was just a plain white screen with square polygons and stuff like that. And the thing was, you could connect these polygons together to make paths by changing your perspective with the camera. You would move your perspective around, and that would complete your path for the character to get to the end of the level, which was definitely a very creative way of making a game, and made a game still seem interesting by only doing something as minor as using perspective as a way of changing the way you looked at the game.
A simple mechanic can sell a game.
Absolutely.
Kind of like with the, we beating a dead horse here, Minecraft, it sold simply on playing blocks.
Yeah. You know what? Funny enough, I'll actually bring it up now, and we were just talking about it a little while ago. We actually got a early access for a game. We got Steam codes for a game, which it's called Screen Sheets. And what's cool about this game is it takes everything in first-person shooters that you've always hated. I know personally I hate screen lookers. I can't stand it. It just hurts the game.
We mentioned it with GoldenEye, and I remember later when we would play Halo split screen, the one thing that sucked was you're looking at my screen, you know where I am, you couldn't surprise somebody because they saw where you are.
Exactly. Well, the thing that Screen Sheet does is that it uses that as the element for the game. On your screen, you cannot see enemies. You can only see enemies by looking on other people's screens. That is a crazy change for that style of game that makes it extremely interesting, and I can't wait till we play this game.
I am incredibly excited.
I'm really excited, yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait to, get my hands on this game and play it for the first time, but just seeing what they showed us was incredible, and I can't wait to... It's all about perspective. Changing perspective in a game makes a game incredibly more enticing to the consumer.
Exactly. And not only that, I love the fact that it's so novel. It's such a simple spin on such an old concept. Not to mention, too, I'm just happy to see the possibility that we actually have some split screen coming back, because I can't tell you the last time, even if we're doing it online, even if we're just watching each other's perspective from the same screen.
Yeah.
Like split up into fours. It's like I can't even remember the last time that I would have screen looked in a video game.
Yeah.
I'm actually excited to try this.
I feel like it's going to be extremely difficult to get used to at first.
It's interesting, too, because like a big thing in indie gaming and gaming in general is retro gaming. We see a lot of pixel art coming back, but, only now are we really starting to see kind of this nostalgia for 3D era gaming, namely split screen and screen looking.
Yeah. Well, another game that I feel like takes a take sort of like that is a game that we've talked about here at Obstructed Views, not with the Dungeon Brawlers podcast, but with Obstructed Views from, honestly, the beginning of the website, is a game that we love called Default Dan. It's made by friends of ours at Kikiwick Studios, and they made it in one of those game jam competitions where you have like a certain amount of time. You have like 48 hours.
So it's like a 24-hour film for video games.
Yeah, that's basically what it is.
That's cool.
And they made a game called Default Dan. And the thing is with game jams is usually they have a theme of some sort that you have to follow. And the theme of the game was Eye of the Beholder. So basically what they did was they made a game just like Mario called Default Dan, but everything is opposite. You touch coins, you die. If you fall in pits, it brings you to the top of the level. If you touch cupcakes, you die. If you touch marshmallows, you die. If you jump on spikes, it bounces you in the air. If you jump on springs, it makes you not jump high at all. It's just changing the way you would play a game like that. And it made it extremely interesting and frustrating at the same time, because it's honestly implanted into your brain, this is the way I'm supposed to play this game. And then when you initially play this game, you tell yourself, okay, well, I got to grab coins, I got to do this, I got to do that. And once you start doing it and you die once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, you start to get frustrated, but it's in a way that you actually enjoy, because it's giving you a different look at something. It's recycling something you've already done and making it new again in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. It looks like, if I'm not mistaken, it looks like, Patrick, you are looking at The Binding of Isaac.
Yeah, it's a game I haven't played, but some friends have told me about. Do you know more about it? Or
I know a decent. I mean, I've played The Binding of Isaac. It's a game it plays almost identical to, say, the original Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a little bit more procedurally generated. You can run into different bosses at different times, and every time it will be different while it's telling you the story of Isaac being locked in, I believe it's the basement.
It's the basement, yeah. His mother decides that she needs to sacrifice him.
Yes.
I watched it, and just the intro movie is one of the most screwed up things I've ever seen in a video game. It was great.
The thing that makes that game so interesting to me is it didn't really change the way you played gaming, but it was such an interesting concept that it still did extremely well.
It's like the original Zelda's exploration aspect, and basically like the basic perspective that you have meets a roguelike meets like a shoot 'em up game.
Yeah.
It's kind of neat. Like you can use a roguelike to take a classic concept, like simplified, and you can re-experience it. You make it fresh.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Which I think people want. Kind of on the same page as I know a lot of people really enjoy Super Meat Boy.
I never got a chance to play Super Meat Boy, but I've never heard somebody say a bad thing about it.
I really enjoyed Super Meat Boy.
Did you?
Like, it's a game that right off the bat tells you, like, you don't have to use a controller, but you should.
Yeah, you probably. Yeah,
Like
you
it tells you you're an idiot if you don't play with a controller.
It's a friendly but absolutely necessary warning now, because the controls are incredibly tight.
It's a very tight platformer game. It's pretty much like speed running the game. It's got like a Mario 3-esque board, like for worlds, and you select stages. And I don't know. Did you ever play N+?
Yes,
It's a lot like N+. You can jump off of walls. Super Meat Boy actually has like something like 8 or 10 unlockable characters, each of them with their own like mechanics and physics. Okay. But the idea is just to get to the end point in the stage, and it might require you to go back and forth through a stage with tons of obstacles like buzzsaws and lasers and all sorts of things that will unlock a different section of stage. But it's a small board, and you just have to get to the end point.
Yeah. So that does sound like really... And I've always loved games like that. I mean, platformers... I don't think you could go wrong with a platformer style game unless you really like try to... I feel like innovation is something that can be done with platformers, but only to a certain point. When you try to innovate to a point to where it's no longer a platformer in a way, that's when you start to harm...
I don't want to bag on this too much. I don't think they're bad games, but I never really got into the new Super Mario Brothers games. They're definitely like traditional platformers, but they feel bogged down and slow to me. And I guess Super Meat Boy is kind of the opposite of that.
Yeah.
A very fast, lightweight game.
It takes it back to its roots.
I don't know.
Much simpler.
I mean, I have the new Super Mario Brothers U, and I enjoy it.
That's the one where you can be like cats, right?
No, that's 3D World.
3D World, okay.
3D World is a lot of fun.
I enjoy that. That reminds me of like the old like Ninja Turtles sort of like arcade games.
It was fantastic. It was a fantastic game. Probably one of the best for the Wii U at the time when it was released. I mean, now the Wii U is starting to get more games, but that's not something we're going to jump into, obviously, being that it's indie games that we're talking about. But another game that I played on the Wii U for the first time, and that's where I got my first play of it, was a game called Mutant Mud.
Mutant Mud.
And that sounds familiar. What is that?
It takes...
That goes back to the old multi-user dungeon games, right? Or,
no? The way the game works is it uses 3D in a way where you will move from, say, the forefront to the background of the game to go through different areas of the level. Like, you can't go any further in the foreground, so you have to find an entrance to the background of the game and continue moving around.
So it's got a depth mechanic, kind of like what do you call it?
Have you ever played Kirby Triple Deluxe? Kirby Triple Deluxe.
I didn't play that one. What's the PlayStation game with the Sackboys? Little Big Planet. It has that depth thing. Okay, I got you.
Yes, like Little Big Planet. Little Big Planet made by Sony, or was it an indie company?
I believe
it was Sony.
I think that was like a Sony related thing.
I was just wondering if maybe that was an indie game. Well, of course, I'm going to bring it up since we were talking about platformers. I have to bring it up again, and I know if Dan were here,
I'm not sick of you mentioning it.
He would be chewing me out for it. But Shovel Knight.
Shovel Knight's a big, successful, great indie game.
It was a fantastic game. I can't praise that game enough.
There's nothing wrong with repeatedly mentioning a 10 out of 10 game.
Exactly. Yeah. If you have not bought this game yet, and you are listening to the 4th week of the Dungeon Brawlers, what the fuck is wrong with you? Seriously.
Look, having a problem with us mentioning Shovel Knight, it would be like picking on the angry video game nerd for mentioning Castlevania. Like
Castlevania 2.
Well, he always compared everything to the original Castlevania.
Oh, well, yeah.
Like, so much so he had to do a 4-episode special just to air everything out.
Yeah. That's very true.
We're not going to do a 4-episode thing on Shovel Knight. We don't need to talk about it. Just go play it.
Yeah, I certainly could, but we're not going to. I am a personal believer of, if you hear good things about a game from multiple sources and, they're really adamant about it, it's definitely something you should at least test the waters.
Yeah,
you should at least give it a shot.
Especially if those reviewers aren't making money off of their statements and also are just sitting in a living room talking about them.
Yeah, like me.
Excuse me, this is a dining room?
And actually,
we're in it. It's a room. We're living. Yeah. How about you stop nitpicking?
I'm sorry. I'm terrible at this. So, one other platformer I would actually like to mention, and we still need to play this online. I have been getting a kick out of Battle Block Theater for the last few weeks.
Theater is one of my favorite games.
I picked it up on the Steam sale. I love the Behemoth. I loved Castle Crashers. I picked that up probably first couple of days of release on the Xbox 360, and then I got Battle Block a couple weeks ago. My favorite part of Battle Block is the fact that it's a well-designed puzzle platformer.
Yes.
But then every once in a while, after you finish a certain level of stages in the story mode of the game, they throw you into that timed.
Oh, the timed trials.
Runs, which are like the most hectic thing humanly imaginable. Like, you actually have that palpable sense of like, oh my god, I have to get to the end.
I think one of my favorite parts about that game, besides even just the way the game plays, because the game plays absolutely flawlessly. I don't think. I mean, every game I think the Behemoth has made has been great, whether it's Alien Hominid or Castle Crashers
that's
or
the Alien Hominid guys.
Battle Block Theater. Every single one of those games is an absolute hit.
Yeah.
But the thing that really got me about that game is the storyline.
The storyline is absolutely amazing.
Stamper is quite possibly one of the funniest voice actors I've ever heard in my life. And I feel like they just went, look, we're going to let you just riff on it and have fun with it. And just the way he does it is so beautifully done. And the song at the end of the game, I don't know if you got to the end of the game.
I haven't gotten to the end of the game.
There's a song called "Buckle Your Pants" at the end of the game. It's the stupidest song, but it's hilarious. And every aspect of their games is interesting and fun. That I think that's the key word. There's a lot of games that'll pique your interest, and you keep playing because of that reason. But the Behemoth games are just naturally fun.
They ooze personality.
Yes,
absolutely, and it's they definitely have an identity.
Maybe that's something we should do on a Dungeon Brawlers Let's Play like Castle Crashers.
Yeah, absolutely.
I would do Castle Crashers.
I would totally be down for Castle Crashers.
Definitely.
We could definitely do that. But they're definitely a company. And it's funny because some people would ask the question of whether they're still what we would consider to be indie, considering the popularity of the Behemoth. But if you're going to consider a company like Mojang to be indie, how could you not consider the Behemoth?
It gets into that weird debate now of like, does financial success or does critical success
what makes a company
something
AAA against
exactly versus indie? Is it the size of the development team? Is it the amount of releases per year?
And that's something I know, speaking of development team size, is definitely something that Pat wanted to talk about in terms of the cycle of development teams in terms of indie gaming.
Oh yeah, this is kind of it brings us back to a little bit of the old days. We think of the old days of PC gaming where games were kind of sold in plastic bags on bulletin boards in computer shops, and they were made by small teams. The one I think of that Ian and I are huge fans of. It's kind of how one of the things that brought us together originally so many years ago. But id Software was like 4 or 5 guys, something like that. Just they would develop it on their work computers. They actually stole the computers out of their workplace at night and developed on them. But it was about as well organized as us three sitting here with microphones at a dining room table.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The first game id made, was that Commander Keen?
Yes, Commander Keen. Or no, was it? No, Commander Keen came out first, and then Catacombs 3D.
Did it?
Because that was one of the first forays into the 3D tech. But no, originally id's original project, which John Carmack worked on, was that they wanted to port Super Mario over to the PC.
Particularly Super Mario Brothers 3.
He developed the technology. Right. He developed the technology that allowed for a PC to handle the side-scrolling element.
Smooth scrolling,
to generate the scrolling effect.
And they submitted it to Nintendo. Nintendo was not interested, so it became Commander Keen. Mm-hmm. They started out putting their games on the Big Blue Disc, which was like a subscription thing. Not much bigger than putting Ziploc bags with discs on the bulletin board at the computer shop.
Yeah.
The shareware model became big, where you could get the first episode of a 3-episode game, and you would order the other 2 by mail. And game budgets and development teams have really ballooned since then. But now, you're seeing small teams of just a few people making games again.
You know what? Now that I thought about it, we were talking about Minecraft being one of the first major successes, or one of the biggest major successes, and one that you could certainly talk about as one of the majors in terms of indie success. But bringing up id, think about some of the games that they made and the absolute just juggernaut that they were. I mean, Commander Keen was not the biggest game on earth, but
no.
Duke Nukem was.
It has its charm to
it. Well, Duke Nukem was more aptly, but Doom was Doom was like a cultural force sort of thing.
Wolfenstein. Yeah. I mean, they're still making Wolfenstein games. Obviously not.
New Order just came out.
Yeah.
Wolfenstein was definitely a great game, but I feel like it, like Pat said, I feel like it's really Doom pushed it to the next level.
Yes,
absolutely. That was their big breakthrough.
I had a discussion at work the other day with a kid who's probably like maybe 10 years younger than me, and we were talking about
piece of shit.
I know, I'm old as shit.
All right, Grandpa's gonna tell us stories again. Everybody go to sleep.
But no, we were talking, and one of the things I mentioned was that I love, like, in terms of a pure gameplay experience that is just perfect in every way, shape, and form, something that still holds up today. I can still go back and play Doom and have just as much fun as I did when I was a kid. Some of that may be nostalgia.
Well, I think it's kind of the same thing with games like Super Mario Brothers or like Castlevania. Like some of these games, the core mechanics are very well put together.
And the thing is, and it makes it even cooler, is with the indie community came indie development of like modifications for games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which comes, talking about Ian loving Doom, on, I believe it was the 20th anniversary of Doom, or was it the 20th?
It was the 20th anniversary, yeah.
Of Doom. Me and Ian streamed Brutal Doom, and it was absolutely one of the best experiences.
Oh yeah, we need to put a link in this description to Brutal Doom and all of the all the engine modifications that you need. I believe it works in GZ Doom now. One of the source ports for the original Doom engine, but Brutal Doom is incredible.
Oh, Brutal Doom.
It makes it feel like a completely different game.
Absolutely. I mean, adding different, being able to look up and down changes the game
entirely.
Yeah. Entirely.
Because with Doom, you just
straightforward.
It wasn't
looking.
Truly a 3D game. Like it was 3D visually.
Yes.
But there was no actual Z-axis. Like you'll notice that in Doom there were never bridges that you could walk under and over.
Yeah.
No. You want to know, and I thought about this, and I don't want to touch on it too much, but one of the first games that did the Z-axis was actually Link to the Past, if you think about it. Because you had you could stand on the top level and try to attack an enemy on the bottom level, and you could never hit them. There was a Z-axis in there that wasn't kind of not present before that. But
it is funny, early on 3D was more of an illusion.
Yeah.
Like in Link to the Past, it was kind of a binary, like you can or you can't hit something.
Yeah, sometimes you could just
like Z-axis was not an actual Z-axis; it was a Boolean.
Yeah.
Or like Star Fox, it looks 3D, but it's really a 2D game. You go up and down, left and right.
Yep. But to stay on topic, I thought it would be just interesting to bring that up. But
now that we've gotten completely off of indie games,
no, we were because we just went off of id. We went off of id, which I personally consider to be an indie development company.
Yeah, in the beginning, absolutely.
Yeah. Other games that have really piqued my interest. One game that definitely piqued my interest is a game on Steam by the name of Monaco.
I played Monaco.
Monaco's a lot of fun. Monaco's a lot of fun.
I haven't gotten to play that. We got to do that.
Oh, definitely. It's a lot of fun. I mean, it's a bank heist type game, which will go into Ian's favorite bank heist game right after this, since we're talking about bank heists.
I mean, it's my favorite too. It might be one of my favorite games.
I think it's all three of ours,
but Ian, I would say, is the best player in the world.
But with Monaco is the adding of different elements in terms of you have different character types. You have the thief, or you have the pickpocket, the mole, the girlfriend,
the cleaner,
and every one of them has like a different role, and it's kind of fun to sit there with a 4-man crew and try to figure out what crew can. And it's funny because every job that you do in that game, you can use a different crew to optimize that mission. You can't go down and use the same crew on every single mission and expect to get the same results as you did. And I think that's a really cool element in that game, which made that game a lot of fun. But going into Ian's favorite game,
I'm on the spot now.
The spotlight is on you, my friend.
We were talking earlier about Payday 2 again, because I can't stop playing Payday 2.
Did we mention it in the last one?
No, we did not.
I don't think so. That was the first one we didn't mention Payday 2. I'm proud.
And that one we didn't mention Shovel Knight either.
Oh my god.
I think so. We're both 3 for 4.
Yes.
On mentioning our favorite games. But no, we were having this discussion earlier. Overkill.
I'm getting left
Software.
out of my favorite game here.
No, Overkill Software, the developers of Payday 2, they're a very small team. I would call them indie.
I would call them
definitely.
indie.
Definitely.
About 40 guys and gals. But one of the great things about what they're doing now is that, they came from the humble beginnings. They released Payday the Heist a few years ago. Payday 2 being the sequel to that. And basically, they released Payday 2, broke even before the game had even come out. It became such a juggernaut, especially on Steam. The PC community is absolutely in support of this game. And their parent company, Starbreeze Studios, actually just got listed on the NASDAQ, I believe, a few months ago, almost exclusively from all of the financial proceeds from this game. The other great thing too, going forward, is that Overkill now has a contract extension through Starbreeze, where they were given an advance in December because of the performance of the game at market, where we're going to have at least another year of support for the game. DLC, heists, all sort of good stuff.
Good stuff.
And in terms of elements of what Payday brought to the table that was different, in my opinion, is not a lot. It's not much different than other style. It's just, I think what sells that game to me personally, at least in my opinion, is the suspense. Being in the middle of that heist and having waves of police just
it's a good co-op game. I think co-op's kind of overlooked.
Yeah, co-op's definitely,
especially in AAA markets.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons why I like it too, is it's a true co-op game. It's not a co-op game where you can have 3 players and nobody works together. You need to be able to coordinate with the people that you're working with, or everything can just fall apart really quickly.
It's definitely a game that subscribes to its own aesthetic. Like it doesn't try to have like a super mass appeal. Like it has the music it has, and the soundtrack's one of the best parts of the game.
Simon Viklund is a genius.
Like I like his music outside of the game. I listen to it in my car all the time. I think I've listened to The Mark from the soundtrack every day for the past 7 months. That's not an exaggeration.
It's pretty intense.
That's
pretty intense.
But I think that in general for indie games, that's a big plus for them. It's a bonus. Is they don't have to meet expectations for mass appeal. They make the game they want the way they want it to be, and they live or die if it sells that way.
Yeah.
But they're not beholden to anybody.
And it's fantastic that they found such runaway success, because honestly, as my hours played on Steam can attest, it's probably one of the most compelling games I've played in a long time. And like Frank said, it's a wonderful co-op game, which is something that you don't find that much anymore. And on top of that too, it just has its own aesthetic.
Yeah,
it's awesome. It's picture any.
Initially, they had their own aesthetic. Like they did a lot of photography work. With actual people models in these masks to create a lot of the elements for the game.
I think one of my favorite parts is, and it's kind of a side story to Payday 2, is the one night I'm talking with a few friends and they were sitting there and they're asking me, they're like, we were talking about movies for whatever reason. And they're like, what was the best movie you've seen lately? And I was like, the intro movie to Payday 2.
Is that the dentist?
The dentist office.
Oh man, that was a big deal for them. Like, I guess this is kind of like a making it big moment for them when they picked up a big name actor to do some of their marketing.
Yeah, Giancarlo Esposito from Breaking Bad.
From Breaking Bad, yeah.
Gus Fring.
Which really doesn't like change the game itself that much. It's only a voice you hear in menus, but like that kind of indicates how far the game has gone.
Absolutely.
It's a we've made it moment.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
And that's the thing. To me, everything about the game is well put together, but it is definitely a niche type game, and they don't try to market. They don't try to push anything to make the game, as you were saying, they don't try to do anything outside of their comfort zone. They don't try to do anything that's going to... I think the term is
mass appeal, which some games have to have. Like, think Call of Duty, like it has to be like... And America is great. Soldiers are great. Like, big international plot so they can sell it to everybody in the world. They're I don't know.
Well,
you have to sell it to everybody.
Well, it's the fact of the matter is when it comes to Payday or against Call of Duty, this is obviously my opinion. There's no right or wrong answer here, except mine's right, and everybody else is wrong.
Our opinions are fact.
But
even when they contradict.
Payday will not put something in the game for the sake of putting it in the game. They put things in the game that feel right, that fit the motif of the game. They're not going to throw anything in there. Like, for example, it's a game mode that I actually enjoy in Call of Duty is the zombies mode, but where does it fit in the overarching game?
Yeah, it is kind of weird.
It's just kind of an out of left field kind of thing where Payday's not going to do anything like that. They're not going to throw in a zombie survival thing for no reason.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, honestly, like, it could be, just to capitalize on that entire idea, it could be something that Overkill could probably implement, just wave defense against ever-increasing difficult waves of cops.
Like slow creeping cops, like zombie mode is, where it's...
exactly.
No, but it has its own wave defense thing, and it has its own version of difficulty. But like if it succumbed to like public pressure to be more marketable, I don't think you would be fighting police, and I don't think you would be taking civilians hostage, because that would be kind of not kosher.
No.
But like, and I don't want to delve into like video games violence. Like, do they make people violent? But
that's a huge topic for another day. That's a big rabbit hole to go down. But like, this is a game that knows what it is. There's kind of a campiness. It's like a heist movie simulator. Yeah.
And I think
it's the movie Heat.
And one of the things I think I enjoy about it, because of it being that way, is the game's edgy.
It's
edgy.
The characters each have a sort of personality.
Yeah. It's without throwing in this huge storyline, you grow to know the personalities of the characters without a storyline.
Yeah. Or there's self-contained little storylines. That's actually probably the one thing I can detract from Payday 2 a little bit, is that the first game, Payday the Heist, the heists felt larger.
Like they were each like kind of an escalating thing for this crew. Like, they were getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah,
they broke into, but I don't know. Should we go into detail with this?
No, let's not. Let's know what? Let's leave this, because this will act as our small teaser
mode
for our plans for the next couple of weeks. The anniversary, as we said a couple weeks ago, is coming up on August 13th. There's Crime Fest going on right now.
Crime Fest is on now.
As we speak right now, we are probably, I believe, less than 1,000 people away from finally earning the Old Hoxton breakout. Speaking of characters from the game, our old British friend is finally coming back. So stay tuned to us, and stay tuned to any of our...
we are so close. We are at 1,149,001 members.
999 members away. We're so close.
And here's the thing, guys. We are doing a special 30-minute podcast that we are dedicating to Payday 2.
In fact, could I amend that? 30-minute minimum?
30 minutes.
Yeah, it's probably going to bleed far above 30 minutes.
30-minute minimum. And here's the thing, guys. This is another reason why you should pay attention to the podcast, we're going to be giving away Steam codes for Payday 2. So,
and that's only the beginning. Like, we'd like to give away Payday, but in the future, we'd like to give away other games too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're definitely going to expand on this. And the other thing too is, as we said the other week, not only are you winning a copy of Payday 2, you are winning the opportunity to play with the Loud Operators. You can play Payday 2 with us, and we'll teach you the ropes and everything.
We'll teach you the ropes. We're going to have some fun. We're not going to do stealth.
No, of course not, because stealth
We're going to
sucks.
teach you the right way to do it.
I mean, people love stealth, and I get that. It's kind of part of the whole thing, but no, we play the right way.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's enough of the shameless plug for now.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Shameless plug
End
deactivated.
Teaser circuit.
So
other games.
Again, be sure to check out August 13th.
Yep.
But yeah, what are some other indie things that are big? I think that this might be one that you know more about, Ian, is strategy has always been a big genre, but many people might say that Paradox Interactive is really taking the bull by the horns on this genre, and it seems they qualify as indie.
Yeah, they definitely have. They have a very niche appeal, all of their games, but the one actually I will openly say I'm actually kind of ashamed of myself. I actually bought into Europa Universalis 4.
Well, that kind of seems like their core game. Like,
yeah.
it's a bigger, wider open strategy game, and then they have these like niche era.
Yeah, actually, no.
games.
All of their games are classified as grand strategy.
Right.
It's done on a grand scale. There's a lot of little details to micromanage and everything.
Now, are we talking about game? I just want to be clear. We're talking about games in the similar style as like a Civ,
like Civilization. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought that type of game was called a 4X.
Oh no! This is
it's kind of in the same realm.
Vaguely a 4X. It's more a 4X is you start from a singular point, and you expand your empire from there.
Okay.
A lot of the Paradox games, it's based on historical events. So you play a particular nation.
Like giant enemy crabs?
No. Not like giant enemy crabs, because there weren't any giant enemy crabs in Europe where most of the game takes place.
sorry.
If you went into Europa Universalis,
if
you
we
could play Japan.
I believe they're indigenous to Japan.
If we were talking about a game like Total War Shogun, we might be running into an issue with giant enemy crabs.
Yeah.
Got it.
But no, this is more a game where you pick a particular nation, a historical nation, to play as, and essentially it's more playing politics.
Okay.
And it's more playing, it's micromanaging a lot of different facets of your empire, and it's manipulating different things. The one I got into really big, which I loved, people almost classified it as as more like what's the word I'm looking for? I'm at a loss, unfortunately. No, it was more like a dynasty simulator. It was basically like you were playing out these ridiculous, like instead of playing as a nation and controlling the nation, you were actually controlling the bloodline of the monarchy.
And you're trying to control that nation. So the nation is like the world.
Yeah.
You're playing a bloodline instead of a nation, and it's in a nation instead of a world.
Yeah, there was definitely a certain level of indirectness to the control of your nation, because you also had to deal with vassals, because it was very, very rooted in the feudal system of Europe. But some of it was great. There was all sorts of political intrigue.
Nice.
I could play as a king and kill my wife, and then get with some courtier somewhere.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
that's what what gaming's all about.
Exactly. That's exactly what I look for in all of my indie titles.
Killing my wife.
Oh my!
No, but
we do not kill our wives here at Dungeon Brawlers.
No, we don't.
No, that's because 1/3 of us is married.
Not yet.
Almost 2/3.
Almost 2/3.
I would say we're at 50%.
I would.
Don't think too much about
40%.
48?
Don't think too much about it.
48. That's fine. I'll
Okay.
take 48. But
Negotiation complete.
a game,
Next topic.
A 4X game that I really enjoy, and it's by a company that I really enjoy, is Amplitude Studios makes a game called Endless Legend. And
is Endless Legend good? Because now that I have a new graphics card,
Endless Legend is fantastic.
okay, I loved Endless Space, which was their last game.
Yes, Endless Space was their last game. They do really well on doing the 4X style game. One of the things that I really enjoy about this game is that there's like sort of like what they did in Civilization with like barbarians and stuff like that, but you have minor factions.
Okay.
As well as the 8 major factions in the game. There's minor factions that you can assimilate into your group,
Okay.
rather than just destroy them like you would in Civilization.
Yeah, so and I'm assuming then that they act kind of like the nation states in Civilization 5 did, like an external force that you can manipulate and eventually kind of
you can make them in like a puppet city and stuff like that. The other thing I like is that there's quests in the game. There's little like quests that you can complete on top of your actual world conquest, with doing like diplomacy or whatever means you want to do. If you want to just be a straight up conqueror and take over, or you want to if you want to win by diplomacy or by being the richest economy or whatever it is. On top of that, you have the quests, which give you a whole new aspect to the game, which add a lot more of playtime. I mean, I've caught myself, and maybe it is a question of how good I am at 4X games when I say it, but I'll catch myself doing quests and forgetting about the other things I should be doing.
Yeah.
I should be building up my city-states and whatnot, and instead of doing that, I'm focusing so much on these quests.
So on top of one more turn syndrome, which is just horrible for almost every 4X game, you actually have a distraction.
Yes.
As well, on top of everything else. So it sounds like they're kind of doing a little bit of a like
There's
an
more of a
old
story.
school Masters of Magic, Might and Magic kind of thing, where on top of the Empire building, you also have hero characters and things like that you're controlling.
Yes.
Did you play Starduck's game, Fallen Enchantress?
No, I have not.
Very similar in terms of the overall design. It had a lot of problems when it first launched. Like the CEO basically had to put out a public apology, and they actually wound up giving out the second game for free because of all the technical problems with it. But no, when they finally got everything locked down and they developed it, to the point where it probably should have been released, it actually turned out fantastic. Same kind of thing, empire building with a strong emphasis on individual characters and all sorts of little quests and things you can do.
One of the other things I want to mention about this game is they did a different way of doing the map where there's different levels that you could stand on. Like, you know how in, for example, for like Civilization, they have the mountains and stuff like that. Well, they take that very much into account in this game, even on like hills and stuff like that. A hill can change how a battle will play out.
Okay.
If there's a flying enemy, obviously you don't have much of an advantage there if you were fighting, ground troops from on top of a hill. But
yeah,
just adding these elements to a game, and I know, Civilization does it to a point, but it's a little bit different, and I think mostly the art style is different.
Okay.
But I find that to be an interesting difference and a different factor to the game that I enjoyed.
What kind of combat system does this game use? Because one of my major complaints I remember with the older Civilization games was the basic Stack of Doom tactics issue, where you would basically just have this line of like, say, 50 units occupying one square.
Yeah.
And you would just basically beat these two stacks of units against each other until somebody finally died.
It's kind of the same thing.
Okay, so they don't take that Civ 5 system of like individual units occupy individual hexes.
Well,
and you kind of have to do more tactical maneuvering.
They do, but I think you can stack. What you could do is you can make armies.
Okay. Oh, all right. So it acts as a singular unit,
yes,
and they go into combat together.
But I believe it only goes up to 4 or 5 can be in an army.
Okay.
And it's not 4 groups of guys. It's one guy. It'll be, if you do like a Legion army, it'll be 5 guys is the Legion army. And then that's it. That's your unit there.
Okay.
So it does do it more like Civ 5 did. It just added more of an element of you can sort of stack guys together. It added both elements together to make it a little bit more interesting.
Okay. That sounds interesting. Does it take like different can you stack like say an archer unit with regular foot infantry and then they complement each other? Okay, that's pretty cool.
You can add all different types of military in together to try to make like this solid unit that can do a lot.
Because I know when I play any strategy game, I'm incredibly guilty of just like I could sit for hours and just min-max things. If you give me especially if you give me like a space game, where you can build your own spaceships and design them, I could sit for hours and just do that.
Ian Min-Maxter.
Speaking of, you actually brought and thought of another indie game based on what you just said, is Space Engineers. I don't know if either of you have ever played Space Engineers.
I remember
where you build your own
briefly hearing
ship
about this.
in space, and you can do various things. Like you could build space stations. It's basically a sandbox game in space.
That's kind of cool.
And I think my favorite thing is I like building ships that have like super long fronts that are really fast, and just driving into other ships to see if I can tear right through them. I use it for very stupid reasons. Honestly, you did hear something. You heard the PlayStation 4.
Oh.
The PlayStation 4 decided to turn itself on
Oh, look at that comforting blue light on the
for
controller.
whatever reason. I don't know why, but it turned itself on.
Any good indie games on the PlayStation 4, Frank?
Actually, yes.
Oh, my.
Towerfall Ascension is a really fun game. It's a 1v1, well, not 1v1, it's 1v1v1v1
Would you
type
call
of-
it free for all?
It's a free-for-all fighter, where you're all archers, but you have different like abilities that you can gain in the game, and they'll add different aspects to levels. Like some levels it'll be pitch black, so you can't see each other. Some levels, like, there will be lava that'll come up on the sides or from the top and the bottom, and you have to avoid it. So they add different elements on top of the regular dangers of being killed by your enemy. You have different things happening at the same time in the level. It's a lot of, actually, when we're done this podcast, we'll definitely have to play it so you can see what the game's like. I think you both would enjoy it.
Maybe we should do a Let's Play.
We could definitely do a Let's Play.
Let's just record like 5 Let's Plays tonight.
What's
Let's
a
record
Let's Play?
100.
Give the people what they want.
1,000.
1,000,000.
We could do it all in one night. 10 minutes apiece.
Yep.
But we'll do 1,000,000 of them in one night.
And they'll all be indie games.
Every single one. A game that another indie game on, well, it's on Steam and it's on the PlayStation 4, is Tiny Brains. I don't know if either of you have heard of
I
Tiny
actually have
Brains.
not heard of that.
I think I've seen that listed. I haven't gotten a chance to.
Tiny
yet.
Brains, basically, it's a funny story because it's based on these 4 animals that have been genetically mutated to have different abilities. Like there's a hamster that has cold fusion abilities. But every one of them, like I think the bat can create a vortex. Each one of them has these different abilities. But the idea behind them is that you use them so that you can create different you use them so that it's a puzzle game, but you have to use these genetic mutations to help you get through levels using, for example, like you can there's a rat that has teleportation powers.
Okay.
And like there's a ball that you have to move from one side of the level to the other, but there's no way to get to it. You would use his ability to teleport over to where the ball is and bring the ball and put him over on the other side.
Yeah.
And then go from there. So it's a puzzle game that uses, every character has a different element that they can bring to the table.
Yeah.
Plus it has a bunch of like little mini games, like there's a soccer mini game. There's this one, it's basically moving a ball up a cylinder, but as you go further and further up the cylinder, there will be like holes in the ground, and there's different obstacles that you have to get around on top of, trying to move, and it's like a vertical cylinder, so the ball instinctually wants to roll back, so you have to try to keep it in place or move it forward while dodging obstacles, and it's a lot of fun trying to coordinate with everybody. Another one of those games where co-op is extremely important, because trying to do it alone, you're just not going to get it done.
Yeah.
I think to touch on that, I love indie games because I love co-op. I've always been a big fan of co-op. I remember everybody else was big into competitive games. Everybody liked like GoldenEye because we could fight each other and see who wins. And I always liked the co-op games more.
Yeah, I definitely remember, even especially back in college, I was way into like Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. I remember buying every Call of Duty for at least a couple of years and being really, really into it.
Oh, you
and at the same time,
conformist pig.
Exactly. But at the exact same time, too, I did find
at least
myself...
you're not a conformist anymore.
I know. I'm part of the master race. I exclusively play co-op games almost. Like I delve into the competitive games every once in a while, but honestly, like I think my blood pressure has definitely improved since I stopped doing Call of Duty, since I stopped getting into these hyper competitive games. Another segue I wanted to do while we were talking about indie games and everything else, and I think one of the things that we've been touching on a lot are these very nuanced, very off-the-wall kind of gameplay changes.
Innovative gameplay.
Yeah, exactly. Taking gameplay, turning it on its head, very innovative. I would actually like to bring up a game, kind of do the opposite side of this, the narrative side of games.
Stanley Parable?
Stanley Parable.
Absolutely.
I knew exactly.
That's a fun game.
The minute you said narrative, I knew exactly where you were going.
Like this would probably bother the book people, and it's not quite on par with true literature, but that's as close as we're going to get to literary with games, I think. Like
I agree.
It's observing the form and it's kind of commenting on that through gameplay.
It's a literal. The best way I could describe it is it's a literal choose your own adventure book in a visual format
that acts as a deconstruction of video games
and it's
how we approach and play them.
It's probably the most notable narrator in a video game since GLaDOS from Portal.
I could definitely
agree. That also being a pretty narrative heavy game.
I would say
nearly as heavy as Stanley Parable, but definitely, it really drove the game forward.
Puzzles and narrative, and it does create a kind of tension to it.
That's another game.
But in
that
terms
really
of Stanley Parable, I wouldn't even want to say too much about what the game is about. I would say play it because it's more a commentary on the tropes in games and kind of the the catharses in games, why do we do things in games and what are the results and all that. I would say play it. There's nothing we can really say that wouldn't spoil the game.
Exactly. That's the biggest problem with this game is that any commentary that we could offer, I could give you all the stories about, when I played Stanley Parable, but it would simply be a story spoiler.
I will say
you really
that
have to go and experience it.
Like the game, the start of the game kind of conveys it. Is the narrator tells you that Stanley, and you're Stanley, and he says, Stanley went down a hallway and then he went into the left door, and there's two doors, and you can go through the right door and defy him, but you're given all these choices to the game, and it kind of decides what kind of story you're gonna have. But it's a game a lot about choice and why you do things in games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One thing I will say about Stanley Parable that I very much enjoyed is while exploring the office complex that Stanley worked in, I did find a Dallas mask hidden behind a cardboard box.
Oh my.
Payday 2 name drop.
Nice.
Dude, did you say Payday? Payday.
It's Payday.
I don't even know what that is.
Payday.
I have no idea.
Did he say Payday?
I suddenly hate that game, and I don't never want to talk about it ever again.
Game's horrible.
Indie games suck, and
all indie games are horrible.
We've just wasted the last 45 minutes of your time.
We've wasted our entire lives.
We've wasted an hour of your time telling you about indie games to come to the overall conclusion that indie games suck.
Are terrible, and you should probably buy Call of Kevin Spacey in November.
Yeah, so indie games suck and podcast. No, but really.
I couldn't stay quiet for that. I'm sorry. When he said Call of Kevin Spacey, I'm done after that.
Kev of Spacey?
Kevin Spacey.
Final Duty?
But no.
Kaiser of Soze.
Now, I'm not gonna sit down and bash games like Call of Duty.
No, because AAA games can be good. Like I said before, or did I say it on here? Like a series that I don't love, but I enjoy is Assassin's Creed. It's an action game, and there's some historical intrigue to it. It's not my favorite, but it's somewhat fun to play until you get bored and don't beat the game.
And steal it from Frank's house. Let's not forget that part.
It was the first heist.
Let's not.
We were practicing.
The first heist was steal from Assassin's Creed for Frank.
Can I name drop something else before I forget? Going on our theme.
Sure.
It also deserves an honorable mention for having one of the best narrators in video games. Bastion.
Yes.
I still got to play that.
Yeah, I'll definitely play that. It's fantastic.
Bastion's a great game.
But there's so many examples of indie games and indie developers. I know one that you a game you gave me, Ian. That I really enjoyed. I think I liked it more than you did. Was AI Wars and Arson Games. They've had a few. I won't say they're perfect games, but they're innovative games.
Yeah, exactly. They are definitely a studio that takes basic gameplay and turns it on its head. AI Wars, I would say, probably the biggest thing. If you have not played AI Wars, by the way,
I have
if
not.
you enjoy old school, like
it's definitely like a strategy 4X kind of game. It combines like different strategy.
It's got so much
things.
to it, and I think one of the
it's a
things
neat game because like most of those strategy games, like the natural thing is if you can conquer things, you conquer them. If you like, but in this one, no, you don't necessarily want to advance and conquer things or destroy them, because the more you conquer in that game, the harder the game gets.
Exactly.
And it's a game where you're always playing against the computer.
Yeah, their newest game, The Last Federation, which just came out in May. Is
because you mentioned politics games. I still haven't played that. Is that a multiplayer game?
Actually, it's completely single player. But the one amazing thing about it is you play as the last member of this species, whose species basically almost destroyed this entire galaxy. There's 8 other civilizations that are living on all these different planets, and all you do is
So it's kind of like Star Trek-y.
Yeah, you're on a single mothership. The last of your species, and you actually
Frank just doesn't appreciate great movies like Star Trek: The Undiscovered Country.
Shut up, Wesley.
But yeah, Last Federation, you get to kind of Picard.
You totally just manipulate the development of this entire star system. It's great.
For the duration of this mission, the Prime Directive is rescinded. But
thanks, Captain Janeway.
Like another one they had was A Valley Without Wind. Maybe you would be a little bit interested in that. Have you played that, Frank?
Yeah.
It's kind of like
who actually talked me into playing
a procedurally generated kind of like Castlevania game.
Yeah. One of the games, speaking of like politics and stuff like that, and I don't know, I mean, it's definitely not a game for everybody. I've found a lot of interest in it, and I want to tell a funny story about when I played that game. Is the game Democracy 3?
I played Democracy 2. It was neat. But really what it told me was, like, I don't have the grand scope of things in the world to ever be president. I don't think I could even be a local councilman.
Neither do I, because every time I win, I become president, and I win my second term in a landslide and then get shot by liberals.
Oh, there you go.
Every single time I'm assassinated, and I'm like, why? You know, I have all
Damn, dog, you don't got enough hashtags.
Well, here's the thing. I want to tell a little bit of a story of how I play. I bring down military spending. I work a lot on education and bringing education up. I work a lot for the environment, bringing health standards up, things of that nature, healthcare being higher. But, you know, I'm very much free market and things of that nature. So I'm kind of in the middle. I'm a Republican Democrat of sorts.
He's socially liberal, fiscally conservative.
I believe that's what's called a libertarian.
Exactly, but
those nasty libertarians.
Every time I get killed by the liberals, it's like there's an assassination plot, and then the next week I'm dead.
You know, it'd be neat.
And I'm like, fantastic.
Because this kind of reminds me of Shadow President. Who knows? Maybe one of us would stream a playthrough of that.
Oh no,
maybe.
I want to be Ron Paul.
I want to be Bob Dole.
Yes.
Bob Dole.
Can I be Ross Perot? Actually, I want to be Ross Perot.
Can I be Ralph Nader? I don't even have to play.
Oh, man. But enough about politics. I think that pretty much brings us to the end of the podcast.
We could go on for like another 30 years and maybe like an extra 6 hours after that. But you know, there's lots of neat indie games out there. I think more than anything, it's neat that there is now a market for less expensive games. You know what? Maybe just for a second we can extend to this.
Okay.
I think particularly it's the price point that makes indie games so appealing.
$15.
Yeah, $15. Like how many games were $15 in our first 2 podcasts?
Yeah.
All of them.
But
every single one.
You know, it's
even my blast process.
I'm not gonna say games are more expensive now than they've ever been, because they're the cheapest they've ever been. Like games are still $60, and $60 today isn't what it was 5 years ago, what it was 10 years ago, and then you go back to the Nintendo time, like the old cartridge games where sometimes you're paying $100 for a game.
Yeah. And that was 1988 money.
But like personally, I can't afford to pay $60 for every game I play. Like, I got bills to pay, and well, drinks aren't going to pay for themselves. This podcast brought to you by Johnny Walker Red Label. But, you
Johnny
can buy
Walker
a game
Red
for
Label.
$5, $10,
Get to walking.
$15, and it comes from a smaller budget. It comes from smaller studios. So I don't know. You're getting, I think, more creative games. Maybe not perfect games, but they're at a lower price point. It's
a good alternative.
I was about to say that's
Good
probably
stuff.
the exact best word to
It's
describe
a good
it.
alternative to the AAA, which, as we said, bringing us to the end of this episode. For next week's episode, we're going to bring up the opposite side of the spectrum. We're going to talk about AAA titles
excellent.
Ooh.
and what they bring to the table, and how actually, you know what? I think it's a definite interesting point to bring up in our AAA talk is the change of, genre of games as time went on. Like, the popular style of game has consistently changed, and that's definitely something we can go over as we do our podcast.
It's been slow but marked, and it's happened more than once.
Yes.
And you can find out what all of those different changes are next week on Dungeon Brawlers. And Ian,
Play us out.
play us out.
Next week's Dungeon Brawlers podcast is AAA games. Boom.
End transmission.
Have a good evening, everybody.
Peace.